My name is Jordan Cole. I'm 41 years old. For most of my life, I was the one they didn't count. Not the black sheep, because even black sheep get noticed. I was more like the ghost, the one no one waited for at dinner, the one they always forgot to tag in family group photos. My cousins became doctors, engineers, influencers, even one who married into a political family. And me, I was the guy who tried too hard but never got it together. The punchline, the afterthought. For years I worked odd jobs, warehousing, freelance IT gigs, food delivery, anything I could do to fund my side hustle, a software idea no one believed in. I kept my head down. I skipped holidays when I could. And when I showed up, I made myself small, not because I had no pride, but because I had learned that silence hurts less than condescension. "He's got a good heart," my aunt once whispered at Thanksgiving, like I was a lost pet. I smiled through it, but it burned. Then came the text that lit the fire. "Hey fam, just a heads up, we're doing this year's reunion at the Atrium downtown. Should be fun. Let's keep it tight, just the core family this time." I wasn't invited, not even as a formality, not even by mistake. They'd booked a venue in my own city and pretended I didn't exist. And here's the part that will make you lean in. I didn't reply. I didn't call. I didn't argue. Because the moment I read that text, I knew something they didn't. I had just signed the final papers 2 weeks prior. After years of silent work, quiet failures, sleepless nights, and one lucky break that turned into a gold mine, I had bought the Atrium building. Not rented. Bought. Every square foot. I didn't need to crash their party. I owned the house they were throwing it in. And I knew, when the day came, there'd be no need to raise my voice. Because nothing hits harder than watching someone you dismissed walk past you in silence and open the door with his name on it. The reunion was set for Saturday at noon. I showed up 2 hours early, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to walk through the space alone one last time before they arrived. I had the locks changed a week prior, added my own private office on the mezzanine level, and installed a custom plaque near the entrance. The Atrium, owned and restored by Jordan Cole. Simple, clean, quietly impossible to ignore. I stood beneath it and exhaled. The same building where I used to deliver food as a side hustle now carried my name. I didn't dress flashy. Just a clean black shirt, dark slacks, and polished shoes. I knew how they thought. If I looked too different, they'd say I was showing off. If I looked too plain, they'd assume I was still struggling. But I wasn't dressing for the moment I would see their eyes flicker, the moment I'd reclaim every room I'd been invisible in. I took my time walking the halls, touching the walls I now owned, remembering how many times I passed by here as a nobody, thinking maybe one day. They started arriving just after 11:45. Expensive cars, loud laughter, selfies by the fountain. I watched from the security room as they walked in. My uncles, my cousins, the same people who used to joke that I'd peak at 30 with potential and end at 40 with regret. They walked through the main lobby with drinks in hand, never once glancing at the wall beside the entrance. Not yet. That was coming. One of my cousins, Marcus, spotted me near the staff hallway and squinted like he couldn't place me. Then he turned to someone and muttered something with a smirk. I didn't move. I just stared back, calm and quiet. Let them think I was a manager. Let them think I was staff, because sometimes the greatest power isn't being recognized. It's choosing when to reveal who you are. An hour passed. Toasts were made. Stories were told. No one asked where I was. No one texted. I was right there the entire time, watching them dance inside a building they didn't know I controlled. I walked slowly to the front doors, nodded to the concierge I hired last week, and stood beside the entryway, right where the plaque hung. That's when I saw it happen. My cousin Brielle, the one who once said I'd never figure out what I wanted, pointed at the wall. She froze, called her husband over. He looked up, then another, and another, like a wave of recognition crashing through the room. One by one they turned toward the door, and this time they saw me. It was like watching a movie in slow motion. One by one the smiles faded, laughter stalled. You could feel the silence spreading across the room, infecting it like a cold wind. I didn't move. I didn't wave. I didn't offer a single word of explanation. I just stood there, hands folded in front of me, like a man who had absolutely nothing left to prove, because I didn't. That building spoke louder than I ever could. Marcus, of course, was the first to try and pivot. He came over with that fake half-smile people wear when they realize they bet against the wrong person. "Yo, Jay, this your spot," he said, as if he was asking about a pair of shoes. I met his eyes steady and calm, and said, "Yay, been mine for a while now." That was it. No arrogance, no revenge speech, just the truth. And for once he had nothing to say back. He laughed awkwardly and muttered, "Man, that's crazy." The room began to shift. Suddenly, people were coming over, people who hadn't spoken to me in years, offering hugs, compliments, even business cards. One aunt, who once told my mother she pitied her for having a son who still doesn't have a real career, tried to kiss my cheek and tell me she always believed in me. I looked at her, gently pulled back, and said, "You didn't have to. No malice, just memory, clear and unshaken." I walked over to the DJ, handed him a small envelope, and whispered something in his ear. Moments later, the music cut. The microphone hummed. I didn't take the stage. I didn't need to. The DJ simply said, "We'd like to take a moment to recognize the man responsible for making today's reunion possible. The owner of the atrium, Mr. Jordan Cole." There was applause, sure, but it wasn't celebration. It was recognition. And for people like me, that's louder than any standing ovation. I stepped forward slightly, not to bask in it, but to let the truth settle into the walls, to let them sit in what they'd overlooked. Every comment, every exclusion, every quiet dismissal. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclamation. I didn't just own the building. I owned the silence they used to bury me in, and I had turned it into my stage. And in that moment, surrounded by the same people who once made me feel invisible, I realized something even deeper. I had never been the problem. I had only been too small for their limited vision. It was strange, really, how quickly people change their tone when they think you've made it. The same family that once left me off group chats now couldn't stop asking questions. What kind of software did I build? Who were my investors? Was I hiring? I answered politely, but never fully, not to be rude, just to protect the parts of myself I had learned to build in silence. The version of me they were meeting now was not born out of their support. He was born out of their absence. My mother arrived late. She hadn't known about the building. I'd kept it from her too, not out of pride, but protection. She'd been hurt before, humiliated by their whispers, and I wanted this moment to hit fresh. When she stepped through the door and saw my name on the plaque, her eyes filled before her mouth did. She walked slowly toward me, touched my face like I was still her little boy, and whispered, "You didn't tell me." I held her hands and said, "I wanted you to see it, not hear it." That was the only explanation she needed. Behind her, I could see the stairs. My cousins whispering, calculating, trying to figure out if they'd ever have to ask me for something. It was clear some of them weren't happy. They were impressed, but not happy, because in their minds, I was supposed to stay beneath them. I wasn't supposed to rise past their reach. I wasn't supposed to have options, and now I did, more than they ever gave me credit for. Brielle came up next. The one who once laughed in my face when I told her I was coding at night. She looked different now, still polished, still proud, but quieter. She said, "I always knew you had something in you." I smiled, not cold, not cruel, just honest. "I know you didn't, and that's okay." Her face dropped slightly, but she nodded. That's the thing about grace. It hits harder when you have every right not to give it. I excused myself from the conversations after that, went upstairs to my office and looked out the window, overlooking the venue floor. They were dancing now, drinking, pretending everything was normal, but I saw the shift. I saw it in the way they avoided the plaque when walking by. I saw it in the pauses, the stiffness, the reverence that hadn't been there before. And I realized something important. I didn't just change the way they saw me, I changed the way I saw myself. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about resurrection, about reclaiming the name they buried, and watching them walk into a house built by the man they left outside.
I could have rubbed it in.
Could have stood at the center of that party and listed every time they called me a disappointment, every text they never sent, every time they spoke over me like my voice wasn't in the room. But that's not who I am anymore. My success didn't need volume. It had already become architecture. It stood tall above them, around them. It had ceilings they celebrated under, and doors they walked through without realizing who built them. That was enough. Still, I won't lie, part of me wanted to say something, to speak for the version of myself who used to walk out of rooms with his head down. But what would I even say? Look at me now. No, that would have made it about them. And this story finally wasn't about them anymore. It was about me, about who I became when nobody clapped, about the way I rose without revenge as my fuel. I let them stay in that space because I'd outgrown the need to shut them out. But make no mistake, I didn't let them back in, either. One of the younger cousins, maybe 17 or 18, approached me as the sun dipped below the glass ceiling. He said, "Uncle Jordan, I heard what you built. I think it's awesome. How'd you do it?" I looked at him, really looked, and saw myself at that age, full of ideas, ignored by everyone who thought experience mattered more than potential. So I gave him my number, told him to call if he ever had a real question, not just flattery, because maybe he'd be the first to break the cycle. Maybe he'd learn earlier than I did that being doubted isn't a curse, it's a forge. As the reunion wrapped up, they gathered for a group photo near the entrance. My name engraved in steel framed them from above. Someone motioned for me to join, waving me in like it was nothing. I paused for a moment, and then politely declined, not out of pettiness, but because I knew my presence in that frame would make them feel good, not me. They needed the picture to prove they were proud of me now. I didn't need the picture to know I made it. I walked the hall one last time after they left. Lights dimmed, music gone, just me, the building, and the echo of laughter that finally didn't sting. I looked up at the plaque again and felt something settle inside me. Not pride, not vindication, just peace. A soft, steady kind of peace that doesn't come from applause, but from knowing you became the man they said you never would. I never told them how much it hurt, being erased like that. Being treated like the family name belonged only to those with titles, followers, and curated lives. I never told them how many times I walked past that reunion message in the group chat, rereading the words "just the core family," like it was a line carved into my ribs. They'll never know what it felt like to build alone, in silence, through rejection and self-doubt and debt, and they don't need to. because this was never about proving anything to them. This was about finding the man I always knew I could be, with or without applause. After the reunion, they started reaching out more: text messages, friend requests, invitations. Some of them meant it, some of them just wanted proximity. I answered the ones that felt sincere, the rest I left on read. I didn't burn the bridge, I just let the distance grow, let them realize that bridges are only useful when both sides want to meet in the middle, and I wasn't walking backward anymore. A few weeks later, I got a letter, handwritten, unexpected, from my cousin Brielle. She apologized. Not for excluding me, but for not seeing me. For not recognizing that I wasn't lost, I was just taking a different path. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it gently and placed it in a drawer, not because I wanted to hold on to the past, but because I knew I'd want to remember that some people do change, even if it takes them years to see clearly what was in front of them all along. The building is thriving now. We lease out space to startups, host charity galas, even sponsor scholarships under my name. But more than the money, more than the success, what matters most is that I turned my pain into a place where others could rise. I made my silence into shelter. I made their doubt into foundation. I turned exclusion into elevation. Sometimes I still get invited to family events. I don't always go, but when I do, I arrive early, sit in the back, and speak when I feel like it. Because I no longer carry the need to be heard. I carry something better: peace, purpose, and presence. They say revenge is sweet, but this isn't revenge. This is redemption, and the most powerful kind is the one that doesn't demand recognition, because it already speaks for itself in the life you've built.